Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, I moved into that house on a rainy afternoon. The sound of rain falling on the corrugated iron roof as a reminder that every beginning is a little gloomy. The house was hidden in a small alley. The rent was incredibly cheap. The landlord simply said, "You are free to use everything, except for one room at the end of the second floor hallway. It is always locked." I smiled awkwardly, thinking it was probably just a storage room for old things. But that old, rusty lock kept appearing in my mind like a challenge. On the first day, everything seemed peaceful. I arranged the furniture, rearranged the tables and chairs, and turned on some soft music to drown out the suspicious silence. But as the night went on, I realized that the silence was not comfortable. It was like a void waiting to swallow me, especially in the second floor hallway, where the locked door lay still like a secret that the house was hiding. On the first night, I lay listening to the wind whistling through the cracks in the window. A moment later, from somewhere came a rattling sound, as if someone was trying to insert a key into the lock. I sat up with a start, my heart pounding. I lived home alone, and it was obvious that no one but me had the key. I mustered up the courage to step out into the hallway, but when I stood in front of that door, everything fell silent. I reassured myself it must be just an illusion. But deep inside me, there was something creepy, as if the house was smiling, waiting for me to fall into a trap. The next day, I curiously asked the neighbors about the house. They just looked at me, shaking their heads. "No one has lived there for more than a few months." An old lady whispered, "That room, haunted." I smiled awkwardly, but that sentence was like a seed planted in my mind, growing by the hour. That night, I brought a book to the sofa, intending to read to forget the haunting thought. But when the clock struck 2 a.m., the house suddenly made a loud noise, like the sound of wood cracking. I looked up, the hallway light flickered, and then went out. In the darkness, I saw a faint light coming from the crack in the door of the other room, as if someone had just walked through with a candle. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, a chill running down my spine. That night, I did not sleep. I just sat there staring at the door until dawn. In the early morning sunlight, it looked normal, covered in dust and locked. But I knew I was not dreaming. I decided to find out. 3 days later, when my curiosity overcame my fear, I took a pair of iron pliers, intending to break the lock. When the pliers touched the metal, the air suddenly became heavy, difficult to breathe, as if someone was standing right behind me. I turned around quickly. No one was there. There was only the soft sound of wind and the musty smell from the stained walls. I gritted my teeth and continued to turn the pliers. A click sounded, the lock disengaged. I took a deep breath, gently pushed the door open. Inside was dark, the smell of mold mixed with something pungent like dried blood. I turned on the flashlight. The light swept through the small room, full of dust and cobwebs. But there was one thing that made me shiver. In the middle of the room was an old wooden chair, on which sat a cracked doll, its glass eyes staring straight at me. At the foot of the chair, red stains were imprinted on the wooden floor, like traces of a buried true story. I stepped back, my heart pounding. At that moment, the door behind me slammed shut, the lock automatically latching. I rushed to the doorknob, pulling frantically, but to no avail. The flashlight in my hand flickered, then went out. In the pitch-black darkness, I heard a soft laugh. I couldn't tell where it came from. The first night in the locked room, I realized I was no longer the only one in this house. To be continued in episode 2.